Hi, I'm Ian Brooks from the University of the West of England, and for this Green I/O session, I'm delighted to talk about the topic of green IT is good, but it's not enough. During this London Green I/O 2025, we've heard lots of great stories of green IT, and I want to celebrate it, but I want to challenge us to go further. In the next 20 minutes or so, we'll cover these topics. Think about defining what green IT is, celebrate the successes, but think about how can we expand the target of the benefits we could deliver. We'll talk about the lack of IT impact assessment tools. We'll think about how we can strengthen our business cases, and ultimately we'll talk about the need for advocacy. My background, I have a software engineering degree, undergraduate. Most of my career has been in management consultancy, PwC, and then about 10 years with IBM. I've been involved with green IT since 2004-05, when I was doing work on the shareholder value impact of sustainability for clients of IBM and IBM's environmental services. My last major role with IBM was as their sustainability leader on the big IT outsourcing project at DEFRA, the Department for the Environment in the UK. I left IBM and went as a student to do the Master's Environmental Consultancy course at UE, and now I spend 40% of my time teaching on that course. Perhaps I should clarify that UE, University of the West of England, is one of the two universities in Bristol. Bristol is a great city for sustainability, with regular monthly networking of sustainability professionals, both universities being very highly regarded for what we do in the way we teach and also run the estates. So now I'm a senior lecturer in sustainable IT, so that's 60% of my time teaching computing students about sustainability and the impacts of what they do. I'm just finishing my PhD research. I've been looking at using the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as requirements in systems engineering. Major case study was with Airbus, looking at identifying more sustainability requirements for the build of a 3D manufacturing factory. And second case study was in cancer care informatics, both safety critical industries. I'm also a member of the Karlskrona Sustainability Design Alliance. That's an international group of IT sustainability academics. And we meet weekly and write and publish together. You've seen that I've gone from management consultancy to academia. And now as an academic, I ought to make sure that I define what I'm talking about. So how do we define green IT? What you're seeing on the screen is the most widely cited academic definition of green IT. And you can see that it is very much focused on the IT itself, the equipment, its manufacture, its use and disposal. As I said, it is widely cited, but it's also contended. And you may be sitting there thinking, well, my perception of green IT is bigger than that. And I'll come on to that in a moment. Well, as a field, we arrived in 2009 with the publication of the For Dummies book on green IT. And I really liked this cartoon that was in that 2009 book. I suppose we should plan on getting rid of those coal-burning servers. That emphasis on the importance of fossil fuels. Then much of the electricity we're using for data centers was generated from coal-fired power stations. Now that's significantly reduced. We've had a good story to tell in the IT industry of moving to renewable power until the last couple of years when AI data centers are starting to go the wrong way, putting in place gas turbines on site to generate electricity by burning fossil fuels on site. So it's almost more literally burning fossil fuels on site than it was in that cartoon. I want to celebrate our green IT successes. The logos that you see on screen are projects that I think have made an important contribution to the success of green IT. This is very much my subjective personal view. You may be sitting there thinking that there's a particular project that you've been very inspired by that I ought to list. Well, please drop me an email and tell me why that project should be on the next version of this slide. So we've had impacts like Energy Star and EPAT that have been at the front end of the life cycle of IT, allowing us to be more informed in our sustainable procurement. We've had things like the Code of Conduct for data center energy efficiency, with great best practices as to how to manage data centers more efficiently. We've had the role of Greenpeace as an NGO with their Click Green, Click Clean campaigns to highlight the sources of electricity of different IT providers. I'm very proud of the work that we did at DEFRA, and I think the British government and civil service have made an important contribution, professional bodies like the BCS, and I'm quite impressed by the French government's repairability index. So that's my set of key projects. Do let me know your own. We should celebrate our successes, but if we think about greenhouse gas emissions, the IT sector is only responsible for 2 to 4% of greenhouse gas emissions in that green IT definition of the IT in its life cycle. That is both the in-use emissions and the embodied emissions. It's very hard to get an accurate measure of this, and so you will find a spread of estimates. I quite often use the work of Jens Malmedin and Doug London in my teaching. Their estimate is a little lower, 1.6%. You'll see estimates a little bit above that, 4%. If it goes much above that, then I would question the way in which it's calculated. So most of that, if you've watched the earlier presentations, you will have seen that a large proportion of those greenhouse gas emissions are actually attributable to end user devices, to peripherals. They've been becoming more efficient, but with AI data centers, we have to recognize that the expectation is carbon emissions will increase from data centers through to 2030, going the wrong direction. So a challenge here is to say, let's think outside of that 2 to 4%, that little blue bar at the bottom there, to the other areas where we could apply IT to bring down greenhouse gas emissions. Green IT is a term that's been around for a while, as you saw, 2009 for Dummies report, and it is perhaps starting to show its age. Green clearly means environmental. It reached its peak somewhere around 2013. What you're seeing here is a chart using the Ngram viewer on Google Books corpus. How often was the phrase green IT used? I've shown also the frequency for green ICT, because standing in both of these camps, business and academia, I have to translate between IT in the business context and ICT in the academic context. We still insist on calling it that. So it's dropping. If we think about this from a Gartner hype cycle perspective, are we now in the trough of disillusionment, or are we starting to reach the plateau of productivity where we don't talk so much about green IT because it's part of what we do? I've done similar bibliometric analysis on published papers and on newspapers. The drop-off hasn't been quite so dramatic in the academic paper sector, a bit more of a plateau like the red line that you see. Or perhaps we're changing our vocabulary. We can see green computing has been coming up as a phrase. Sustainable IT, sustainable ICT, not really registering as highly. So whatever you call it, there is some change in vocabulary going on. I talked about that 2 to 4%. That's the green IT lifecycle piece that you see here at the bottom left hand. And I want to challenge us to think beyond the green IT and its lifecycle. We will always need experts who focus on how to make the IT more efficient, lower environmental impact, but it always will have an impact. And so we must do responsible things with the way that we use our IT. So can we do IT for green? Some of you will be familiar with the Hilty and Ebischer lifecycle enabling structural model. This is a way that's quite widely used in academia for thinking about, yes, lifecycle, green IT, but also what are we doing with the apps, the enabling level, and structural, what happens when an application becomes extremely widely used. In my career, I have gone from that green IT bottom left box through to a much broader spectrum, not just environmental, but also social and economic sustainability impacts. And if we think about that broader area, then the phrase that's often used is tech for good. And if you look at press releases, you'll find businesses want to talk about tech for good. All the benefits to be able to sell to society. On the academic side, I think we've settled on calling it ICT for sustainability, ICT for S, and there is a regular annual academic conference. The last one, this 2025 conference, was in Dublin. Quite a relevant place to hold it because now data centers in Ireland consume more electricity than houses. And they don't have a particularly high amount of renewable electricity on the grid, so it's also quite a relatively high emissions factor. There were some fantastic papers. A paper that looked at how to reduce the environmental impact of continuous glucose monitoring devices. A paper that looked at the state of green coding. How can we code more efficiently? And also thinking about, if we're increasingly using AI coding tools, have they been trained on efficient code? Probably not. So are we, when we use AI coding, building in inefficient code that is less environmental? This coming year, 2026, the conference will be in Bern in June, on the 8th to the 12th. Something that is an intersection between the two parts of my teaching is impact assessment. So when I teach environmental consultancy students, if you want to build a new physical structure, a railway, a big road, or a retail park, or a factory, you have to do, in most countries, an environmental impact assessment. And there's usually law that governs it, and it states what are the areas of impact that you must assess in terms of immediate impacts and also cumulative, one of which is climate change. So there's a very well-structured, well-understood approach, and students will go and do that as their professional career. But the other 60%, when I'm teaching IT students, they can design an IT system, scale it to global with virtually no impact assessment. You may have to do a data protection impact assessment, possibly. You might have to do some child safety protection. If it's an AI-based system, you might have to do some AI assessment in the European Union. But really, it's very weak in comparison to that physical implementation. Okay, there is another intersection, which is if you want to build a big data center, then you'll probably have to do the environmental impact assessment, but it won't be to do with what is running on those servers. It won't be to do with the impact of the applications. The Karlskrona group, we offer the Sustainability Awareness Framework, SUSAF, and that's available In a free-to-use version, you can download the workbook. It tells you how to run the workshops to think about the applications of a particular system and its impacts across a range of sustainability dimensions. We've talked about tech for good. Who's going to talk about tech for bad? I guess that's the role of an academic, and it is part of my teaching. There are classic case studies like Dieselgate, engine management software that was written to permit higher levels of pollution when it was not on test. That has had an impact on air quality. It's had an impact in shortening some people's lives. And it's a really useful case study to think about, particularly as an engineer went to jail for that. So it helps us to ask the question of computing students, what will you not do? What applications would you not develop or support? And be very careful. Don't just build what you're asked. If it's something that is an illegal activity that damages other people, you might end up liable yourself. And I've written with colleagues about tech for bad, asking the question, when are we going to stop doing IT work for oil and gas businesses? Oil and gas business must decline if we're going to meet our carbon targets worldwide. And we have no need to explore further sources of oil and gas upstream. If you're involved in IT supporting that, well, I guess that's effectively tech for bad. We will continue to have to support extraction and downstream distribution and health and safety as the industry declines, but it's going to be a declining sector. And if you want to look more about that, I highly recommend looking at the work of Will and Holly Alpine in Enabled Emissions. These are important questions, and it's good to teach students about it, but we can't wait until this generation of students becomes managers. We need managers now to be making decisions that are good for the climate in the future. We need, most of us, to create a business case for the work we propose. And we're pretty good as an industry at identifying cost reduction, maybe from electricity bill reduction, energy efficiency gains. We can perhaps do more to identify the revenue increases that we might bring about, and go out and search consumers who have a higher willingness to pay because of the environmental and sustainability credentials that your service has. Go and seek third-party investors, impact investors. If you haven't done work with government, particularly in the UK and EU, do so, because you can explore how delivering social value can help to strengthen your business case. And given that I also teach in the business school, of course, what we seek to do is to internalize the externalized costs. For example, classically with a carbon price, but check the business or the client that you're working with. They may have an internal cost of carbon for planning purposes, which is higher than the market price, and it'll help to strengthen the business case for low carbon development. Also, encourage you to look for unrepresented stakeholders. You might find that if your company does a materiality analysis in its sustainability reporting, go and look, see who are the affected stakeholders. Can you represent some of their value, costs and benefits in your business case? Perhaps the ultimate unrepresented stakeholder is future generations. I live just across the bridge from Wales, and there they've now had a decade of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, law which requires their government and government departments to consider the impacts of projects on future generations. There is a commissioner who represents future generations. Seek out people like this and work with them to expand what you can put into the business case. My PhD work has been mostly around the Sustainable Development Goals, and I encourage you to use those. They represent a very straightforward articulation of what sustainability is, Target date 2030, so you might feel they're looking a little bit close to their end, but there are serious projects going on to extend that date to 2050. How can we include downside risk? I mentioned Dieselgate, $30 billion of market capital knocked off the share price of Volkswagen in response to that. Another similar amount, about 30 billion in fines and settlements and imprisonment. How do you work that into your business case? And also, the moment that you pick up a business case, you're starting to think in utilitarian ethics. You're trying to balance costs, damage, income. Take a step back and think, is this something that just should be an ethical decision? We will do that, we will not do that. And then we come to the limit of our business case, and we might have something that we really want to do that has environmental benefit, but we just can't make the financial case for it. And Rosie Collington has written about that this year and used the phrase unbankable transition. That is the projects that have to happen, but which a business case doesn't exist yet. There we rely upon a change in the regulatory and government environment, which brings us to the need for advocacy. We all need to be talking more about the reason for sustainability, and especially being confident of climate science. There is a campaign, concerted campaign, to introduce uncertainty about climate science. The academic word is agnotology, creation of ignorance, either by removing evidence, removing data sets, or by spreading multiple arguments so people just get confused. We used to have a cross-party consensus about climate, particularly in the UK. That has now been lost. And all of us need to be talking to other people who can vote. We need to rebuild and earn the mandate for climate and sustainability action. And we need to be believing that the fossil fuel industry is coming to an end. What is it that drives climate change? Predominantly fossil fuel burning and deforestation. There are some other impacts around the edges of that, but we need to behave as if that industry is coming to an end. I'm delivering training for green IT jobs. We need together to be better at identifying what the curriculum is that's needed and how many jobs there are and how students get into them. Where are the entry-level jobs in green IT for students who want to go into that? And ultimately, we need to keep talking about climate and its impacts. As in Catherine Hayhoe's book, Saving Us, this is not about saving the planet, it's about saving a habitable space for humanity. So I'm proud of what we've done with green IT. We have had great successes, but it's a small target, 2 to 4%. We need to expand that target, think about IT impact assessment, strengthen our business cases, and we all need to be talking more. So yes, we've done great things. There's great stuff that we can do, and thank you for what you've done, for the green IT projects you've been involved in, for the Tech for Good, the ICT for sustainability. On behalf of future generations, thank you.